like you lost another one.
Thank you all for joining us for Get Into It with Taz. And before we jump into the various conversations that must be had tonight, the fashion world is weeping. Tonight, one of our biggest icons has gone on to the ancestors, so let's take a moment of silence and give Sir Leon a proper tribute. And moving on from there,
Right.
whew,
Let's roll.
it's been a doozy of a week and a day. Um, let's kick it off with Miss Ghislaine Maxwell. She has agreed to give the identities of between 6 to 8 individuals that have yet to be named in regards to who was getting young girls from Epstein and Maxwell. But there's another caveat going on here. One of the jurors, a man, recently did an interview where he stated that he understood the perspective of the victims because he himself was the victim of sexual abuse as a child. Maxwell's defense team is now calling for an investigation and a retrial, that this conviction should be thrown out because evidently during jury selection, one of the questions was asked was if you, a family member, a close friend, had disclosed to you or that you had knowledge of a sexual assault. The juror claims that they do not recall any such question, and if they would have been asked, they would have answered honestly.
Yeah, that's a Trump maneuver.
Said juror also admitted that he told his fellow jurors about his assault so that they could have a better understanding of the victim's perspective.
Really?
I get what he was trying to do. I do. But that is not a benefit to anyone who is a survivor when you can potentially let our abusers walk free.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you put us through a whole nother trial.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard enough to speak up, especially when you're speaking up against someone with power or someone who's popular, someone who's well liked. It's hard to keep going and go, nope, I'm going to keep pushing forward until there's justice. You survive a trial. The stuff is being leaked about this trial left and right because remember, the media was not allowed into the courtroom. There were no cameras, there were nothing. But we had all of the nitty gritty and stuff that maybe we should not have gotten from this trial. You had CEOs resigning because of this trial. And here goes this juror. Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
this is the timing of it all and the location of it all. It's one thing to not want to reveal things to people, or to, for whatever reason, you want to keep something inside so you're not quick to want to admit something that's happened to you. In this case, this was a court setting. This was something that could, if it came out at a certain time, at any time, could literally disqualify you, the individual. And if it happened after the fact, yes, it could affect whatever verdict was made.
And my thing
Um,
is, if you have no problem telling a room full of strangers that you don't know,
yeah,
why couldn't you just say it in open? And it wasn't even
yeah,
technically open court because jury selection isn't open court. Uh,
yeah.
and I know
I
everybody
mean,
has their different comfort levels. I know people who have survived assault and they have no problem talking about it at a drop of a dime anytime someone wants to ask, or if they're trying to help someone because they're fervent advocates and they have healed in a way that other people haven't. I get that.
right.
But it's like, my guy, you told the jurors and then you told a reporter.
But there's a questionnaire. I know because several months ago, I was called for jury duty. I was sent notice, had a questionnaire. I went online and did it. And it asked specific questions, and it left some openings for you to add stuff, um, based on certain questions and how you wanted to answer it. And yeah, I've never had to serve because of what I do, and what my father did. And they never want me, to sit on a jury basically, um, because obviously they'd feel somehow, some way I'd be biased. But that gave you the opportunity to either be accepted or denied early on before you even called to a courthouse. You would have
Mhm.
been disqualified. They would have told you, thanks, no thanks, we don't need you at this time. They would have moved on to the next. The fact that it's revealed at this time and to your fellow jurors, regardless how many it was, it leaks out because you disclose to people you don't really know, and you don't know who they're going to talk to. And it could just make a whole mess of what was already done and rightfully done.
And there's some people that are questioning, like, oh, why is the defense attorney asking for an investigation, an inquiry, if you will? And I hate to say this, but we have to call a spade, and we have to look at all sides and we have to be honest. There is a question as to, is this juror telling the truth? Or is this juror the type of person like the rest of us that are disgusted by the charges
Yes,
and was like, oh, I'll just give this cover story to sway to make sure she goes to jail. We don't have Epstein, but we have her. So
right,
you do have to confirm that.
right. She was an integral piece in this whole world that they were living, and she knows the connections that were made with other prominent figures, and she needed to be held accountable for her role. And there were many people that, many of these young ladies that stepped forward, and as hard as it was, knew that this was their opportunity. Who'd want to put anyone through anything else again? Like, who, this was it. Like, this was the
Yeah.
time to do it.
There's one young lady that will have to take the stand again, but it won't be so public because her case is a civil matter regarding Prince. Well, sorry. He has been stripped of all titles. Andrew,
Yeah.
over in the UK.
Yeah, he's been stripped.
Um, but yeah. Oh, and we have an Ethan Crumbly update. And if you all are not familiar with who dear little crazed Ethan is, he is the young man whose parents knew that he was going to shoot up the school. They ran, he shut up the school, and he's fought to he's claimed, oh, I can't stay in jail. I need to be in school. Bruh, you shut
Right, right.
up your
We
school.
we saw what you did in school.
But he has pled
Yeah, we weren't there for the
he's
grades.
pled not guilty.
Yeah, I don't think he's trying out for the track team.
Like that's all I got. You know what? I can't with him. Like I cannot with the shenanigans between his parents and him. And
No.
then you're touting this grown man,
Uh,
the next
uh,
person, uh
yeah,
Chandler,
I'm sure they know the Rittenhouse family.
yeah, Chandler Halderson, the one that they're saying the Eagle Scout. Oh, shut up. Um,
Yeah.
we recently discovered the reason he murdered his parents is because he was living a lie, and his parents accidentally uncovered his web of lies. Um, he was pretending to be in college, and yes, they were giving him money for school. He claimed that he had a degree. His father called to try to, he was like, there was no graduation. Where's this degree? Where's this certificate? They should have given it to you, like a concerned parent would be, thinking that his child has been ripped off by a school. He did all this hard work, and they're
Right.
not giving him anything. He lied about working for an insurance company. And here's the doozy. And I think this is what made his parents go, say, what now? He claimed that he would be working alongside of Elon Musk at, wait
Yes.
for it, SpaceX.
Yes. Perfect.
And all that time, because his parents worked outside of the house, he was actually not leaving the house. He was just sitting around all day playing video games.
Yeah, that was top secret stuff he couldn't reveal. Confidentiality. Can't reveal space.
But he said he's going to be working with Elon Musk
Hmm.
via SpaceX, the new leg of the military that Trump created
Yeah.
with the Star Trek logo. Not
Yes.
Tesla.
Yeah, not Tesla and not X-Men. SpaceX.
I'm like, at this point, he should have said he was going to work with Deadpool on X Force. Like, what the?
Let's say that he had gone up with William Shatner and they talked about Star Trek. Yeah.
And what really got me is that I have a friend that formerly worked in insurance. When I wanted to change life insurance policies, I, of course, went to my friend. And of course, when you work in an industry like that, you go to your friends and family first.
That's right.
Nobody thought, oh, he's working for an insurance company, and to just secure his job,
Yes.
he wouldn't.
They could have called Flo at Progressive.
Or the Geico Gecko. But I'm just like, he legitimately, when I tell you,
Yeah.
I was watching it in real time. He had created multiple email accounts to
Hmm.
email himself to try to prove to his parents that he had this. Even went as far as to say that the insurance company hadn't paid him when they were supposed to pay him. He was pretending to be HR, emailing himself. Like, bro, you have the intelligence to have done the things you told you. Well, minus the SpaceX thing, your parents that you were doing, but you chose to waste your time. And I'm a gamer playing video games all day, and then when busted, instead of just saying, you know what, mom and dad, I'm sorry, I will make amends, I'll pay you back the money,
He
you shoot
couldn't put
your dad in the back of the head. And then your poor mom is walking in from work. She hasn't even really been filled in on the details, and now she gotta die. And then you dismember them and barbecue them, and then hide the bodies on property owned by his girlfriend's family. Like, if that don't say fuck everybody, I don't know what does.
and then he went back to gaming. Put the headset
Yeah,
back.
and clean up the house, pull bullet fragments and bullets out of the insulation from the
Right.
Then tried to claim, oh, an intruder came in, but you said you didn't know where your parents were. Like, I guess. But let's see. Oh, I know some of you babies are just all in your feelings because Big Ben Roethlisberger played his last game.
Oh, we know about
Us
Ben.
that are old enough. But
We know
before we
how
get
we are with how he was with the ladies.
ladies is very loose because they were they they wasn't exactly legal. But here we go.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
Uh,
Yeah, they never said, the NFL has never said that Ben Roethlisberger assaulted a woman. They said they labeled it as a lapse in morality.
Now, how many other players have done things that they've definitely held? And it didn't have to be a video, it didn't have to be something that we could actually see with video, but there were other athletes that have had allegations that we didn't have video and they still were held to the code of conduct of the.
And corrects me if I'm wrong. When allegations started popping, and I'm using the word allegation very loosely, not because I don't believe what happened to these women,
Mhm.
but you'll understand in a second. Ben was trolling college bars and college towns. There were security guards and bouncers that said, yes, this happened. We had to remove him from bathrooms. There were witnesses to this. There was security cam footage of it. Now, granted, back then, security footage was not like it is now, but you definitively knew it was Big Ben because he made a point of wearing certain things. So you knew it was him. It wasn't one of those, and I think a couple of us, I know I've done this in my life where you look at somebody and like, oh, they kind of look like such and such. And then you find out in the news or whatever, or
Yeah.
back in our day, we had Entertainment Tonight. We didn't have TMZ. And you find out, oh, that really
entertainment,
was
entertainment tonight.
them. You remember Miss Mary Hart. Uh, because oh my goodness, I cannot think of this actress's name. But it was her. She filmed a movie in the city that I grew up in as a teenager, and so did Tom Cruise. And I had asked to go to, when we used to have a decent mall downtown, to that mall, and I was like, oh, that looks like such and such, because you don't expect,
That is
if you
actually
don't
that.
live in certain cities, you don't expect certain people to be walking around, especially no security, nothing. Oh, that looks like such and such. I get home and turn on the news, and it was. But he wanted you to know that it was him. So please tell me how that was a lapse of morality when you are a very, very grown man walking into the bathrooms and cornering young girls
It's kind of like another artist we know that used to go to McDonald's to pick them up.
who, right before we went live, I got word that he's pulling a Takashi 6 9 and telling on everybody, like, you get a conviction, you get a conviction, you get a conviction. But I'm like, baby boy, you are
They
not
were all on his
Adam.
payroll.
Listen,
They were all on his payroll. He was turning in his payroll. They weren't there for free. They weren't there as good buddies. They were on payroll. Yeah, that's why he's turning them in. Those are ex-employees.
that part.
They're
Yeah,
all held.
but for everybody that's like, oh, I'm gonna miss Big Man. Those of us that are over 40, we ain't gonna miss him. We've been
Well,
waiting.
there's lately, as you see, when they were doing the last game at home and all this, you're gonna see, Family Ben with the kids. Yeah, there's family guys that do that too. Even if at the time he wasn't in a family, he still did stuff that.
All I got to say, any neighbors, parents or friends of his children,
Hide your girls.
nieces of,
I don't care if
don't
they're
let your kids do
Steeler.
no
I don't
sleepovers
care if
over
they're
there.
Steeler fans or not. Hide your
Don't
girls.
let your kids do no sleepovers over there. Mm-mm. Do not take turns with him for carpool. Mm-mm.
Big
Because I
Ben is
promise you,
not
by the
big.
time
Big
those
Ben is
girls,
not Uncle Ben in the
right,
household.
By the time them girls turn 16, how much you want to bet they'll be calling him Ben? Oh, he's so cool. When we go to his house, we did. Mom, you don't understand. He's just cool. And I bet you one of them will be wife number 2 or 3.
Mom, he called me number 7, just like his jersey number.
Hmm. Now this next
Hmm.
one, you can't fix stupid. You. Oh God, you can't fix stupid. Um, and I wish no ill will on anyone. My heart goes out to anyone who, well, most people when they pass. Like when Ted Bundy died, I didn't care. When Manson died, I didn't care. You catch what
What?
I'm saying? But this, when we talk about disinformation kills,
Dapper Ted.
here, this is what we mean.
Když jsem se spole vracela 2 havrány, jsem slyšela, jak jeden druhého se ptá.
She wanted to build up a natural immunity. Now I know that for a while
On
in the
SpaceX?
mid to late 80s, there were some parents, same parents who also believed if you play the record backwards, you can hear the devil. Why would you do that? But I digress. The thought, oh, I want my kids to be immune to the chicken pox. So that if they found out a friend or a family member had chicken pox, they would go take their kids over there, which is crazy. And I'm like, sweetheart, COVID is a global pandemic. Global. And you decided, you know what? My career's taking off as much as it's going to take off. I done spent enough time with my family. Let me just walk out and make sure I die.
She should have asked for a ride on SpaceX to be safe in the. What are these people doing? Jesus, this is what we deal with. This is what we deal with around the world, not just here, around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not all just in America. There's a good many of them here, but there's a lot of other places.
But before we tackle some
The
other
defiant one.
hefty
I
topics,
would have had some. Oh, I would have had something else to say on the football.
we're gonna
I got more to say later. I got something to say later.
okay. But let's take a. I guess
Just yeah.
it brought about change. Here we go.
1959, Mildred and Richard Loving were convicted of interracial marriage, given 1-year suspended sentence, and banished from the state of Virginia by court order. After marrying in D.C. in 1958, the Lovings returned to Virginia to start a family. Their union was a criminal act in the state due to the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. County police arrested the Lovings in their home in an early morning raid. They were charged with miscegenation, a felony, which had a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. The Lovings pleaded guilty. The judge imposed a suspended 1-year prison sentence if the couple left the state for 25 years. The Lovings relocated to D.C. but remained unsettled by their criminalization and exile. On June 12, 1967, they won a U.S. Supreme Court decision ending interracial marriage bans in the U.S.
Love is in the air.
But I can tell you, I love the irony of the fact that their last name is Loving.
Absolutely. And it did happen in my home state of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Commonwealths are evil.
Another Commonwealth.
Yeah, because I learned the hard way that in my lovely Commonwealth, that if
Yeah.
you're in a domestic violence like relationship, and the cops are called and you want to leave, depending on what county you live in, you can't until you
Yeah.
complete a certain amount of couples counseling because
Because wait a minute, the other person lives there too, so we have to consider both parties.
so now they just act you because
But back then it was like, oh, you all are happy. Get out. We're taking you in.
yeah.
Because we
And
don't do that here. Right.
for people who are like, oh, that's not so new. My mother, God rest her soul, was born in 1959. My dad was born in 1957. When I tell y'all that my parents, not my grandparents, not my great grandparents, my parents are older than some of the rights given to women and racial minorities in this country, I'm not joking.
Mm-hmm.
I am not joking.
Right. Remember that couple, the Lovings, they went to DC to get this done, to get married, and came back to Virginia, and that's when somebody leaked the news. Somebody leaked it. Somebody talked. There was no internet back then. Nope. There don't. Nobody tweeted it. They were found word of mouth, and yeah, that wasn't that long ago. This wasn't. This wasn't in the 20s. This is pretty recent when you think of the whole scope of history. It's recent.
That's what I say. And this is why
God
they
bless
try to
them.
get all these pictures into black and white. Riddle me this, Batman. How do we have color photos from the movie The Wizard of Oz?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what year The Wizard of Oz came out. Google it. But civil rights photos are in black and white.
And it wasn't because they're just in newspapers. How about that?
Talk about manipulation at its finest. But
So we always give thanks to the Lovings, which was really Mildred. She's the one who really wanted to do it. He was kind of like a little hesitant. He was a little quiet. She was like, I want to do this. She's tired of getting locked up. She was the one that was getting locked up, not him.
yeah, I was gonna say, Mildred, the
So,
fact that Mildred fought so hard for it, one, that was apropos for any movement, especially when it came to racial movements. Black women have always stood in the forefront and in front of people. You don't know about most of the black people in history. You will when I drop my book. You will, but because we always have male figureheads. I do respect Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., but he didn't set up a lot of the marches that he attended and gave speeches to. They were set up by women. He rolled into town, did what he had to do, and the aftermath that brought about change, that was taken on by women, because a lot of times he came in, stirred the pot, and those people had to deal with that stirring of the pot. And once again, it was the women that came through, like, okay, I will keep you safe. Come over here, do this, da 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 da, and we can get this change. And as much as I love Rosa Parks, it wasn't the Montgomery bus boycott that brought about change in Montgomery, Alabama. It was the Supreme Court case that Claudette Colvin was a part of. And Claudette Colvin refused to give up her seat prior to Rosa Parks. And she was younger than Rosa Parks. It wasn't the bus boycott. It was a Supreme Court case. So as much as we want to erect museums and statues for Rosa Parks, we need to put some respect on Claudette's name as well. And they should be intertwined. If we have a Rosa Parks statue, we should have a Claudette Colvin statue. She should no longer be a footnote in history. And this is also why critical race theory is fervently important. And for those of y'all that think that critical race theory is just targeting white people, no, there are misinformed Native Americans. There are misinformed Black people. There are misinformed Asian Americans. Because everything has been so whitewashed, there are people that don't even know the thriving history between Black people and Mexicans,
Mhm.
and how for generations we helped each other and had each other's back. And that's why the United States right now is working so hard to try to separate us and make us hate each other.
Now think about the Loving case, where, of course, those that know the IR community, um, and many didn't know the story. Obviously, not many people, like I said, whether you're for it or not many people really knew the story. But think about all those that came before and during. Like, they were not like the lone couple, lone. They weren't just the representatives by themselves. Think about all those that were in relationships, that were locked up, weren't able to get married, were persecuted, bullied, whatever you want to call it, by their communities, depending on where they were. This was groundbreaking, and like I said, whether it's your thing or not, this was a breakthrough, and it wasn't that long ago. And so now we take things a little bit more for granted, especially if you live in a city that has a decent size to it, that you see interracial couples, whether they're married or not. Um, so there's a lot of history out there that isn't told, isn't talked about, is brought up, um, and the figures that are involved aren't always. Sometimes we just hear a name, Brown versus Board. We just hear names. We don't have faces. We don't have things behind that. When you're taught history, why wouldn't you be taught true history? History isn't what you see in the Peanuts cartoons, or what. These aren't things that make you feel cozy and warm because, well, yeah, it may have been bad, but don't tell us that. We want something warm and cozy that we can all watch in an animated show or something.
Well, not only that, I want people to think of
We're
one
going.
thing. The people who are fighting the hardest for critical race theory, that are like, well, I don't want my children's feelings to be hurt. That's very telling. That lets you know that they
Right.
come from a line of people like, the daughters of the Confederacy, who were very
Mm-hmm.
influential in the education system, textbooks, etc., in the United States for far too long, that their reasoning for creating history classes was to hurt minorities. And they are afraid, once again, that we're out for revenge instead of for equity, and instead of for elevation. Because there's a content creator on several platforms called Conscious Lee, and I love the fact that he says education is elevation, because it is. They don't want anyone to be elevated. They want to hurt people with the whitewashed history. That's why they begin and end, basically, with slavery for Black people. They make it seem as if, oh, the settlers came over and saved everyone.
Mm-hmm.
How do you save people from what you did?
Yeah.
Everybody was cool and copacetic till you started kidnapping people and then tried to convince people that, no, we didn't kidnap you. Your own people sold you. No, because you even stole us from the Portuguese who were already
Mm-hmm.
stealing us.
But
Like,
let's
you
make
stole from the thief.
but let's make a Disney movie out of it.
Because in 1619, when the first African slaves landed here, they were on a Portuguese slave ship that white colonizers hijacked and brought the slaves over here, and then tweaked what slavery was to further benefit from it. And then they're like, but we saved you. That's like you whooping my ass and then going, at least I took you to the hospital. Bitch, I wouldn't have needed to go to the hospital if you wouldn't have hit me.
Yeah. I mean, hearing about people today talk about how, and this is some deep rooted excuse, that learning history is somehow going to add more guilt to them being white. because
And
they're trying to eliminate their whiteness.
but here's the thing: their whole stitch, racist, created the color spectrum, created the race spectrum, decided that they were superior. I don't know how mutations are superior, but I digress. Whatever. If you're superior, how do you ever have guilt? If you're claiming everything that you've told us is correct, how do you have guilt?
Do people actually know the age of certain civilizations? Because if you know history, you'll learn that the Asian ancestors go way back too.
Mm-hmm.
So, how far back do some people's history go when it comes to world history? Somebody that's put into power, or the majority, is based on who? Because world history is world history. Like, you can date stuff that goes back. I mean, like I said, if you're looking at American history, we're new when it comes to world history. But it doesn't replace the fact that all this conquering and colonizing of different countries around the world at different points in time, these weren't happy ends. They didn't come ashore and shake hands and get invited to dinner and then say, well, guess what? We're here. You all can now pick up that trash over there and get those fields taken care of. There were these weren't peaceful takeovers, you know. This was a corporate ambush, and the locals were all of a sudden, wait a minute, this is our land. Who are you all? Who are you all? And why are you bringing us your diseases and illnesses?
But here's the irony of it all, and it still baffles me to this day. Colonizers came over here to escape tyranny because they felt that their rights were being infringed upon. But then the basis of this country was infringing upon other people's rights and continuing to infringe upon their rights for generation after generation after generation. They felt that there should no longer be a top 1%, but they fight tooth and nail for that top 1%. They wanted religious freedom, but now all of a sudden they want everybody to be the brand of Christian that they are. And I don't know why they think that they're the perfect poster children for Christianity, because these are the most vile, evil people that don't want to be their brother's keeper, help nothing. They want to follow nothing in the Bible minus what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. They are willing to get drunk, rape, and pillage, and that's it. That is the only thing in the Bible they are willing to do. And get rich off of the church.
We remember what the British did in the name of the Church of England. So yeah, that it's deep rooted in the history books. Just it's there. And then when they're colonizing, yeah, I know you all used to believe in the wind and the rain. Guess what? Here's our book. This is what you believe in now.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't given a choice.
Very true. Okay, now we have cops are at it again. What? First, cops never stopped. Let's just roll this footage.
A story out of Delaware where 3 police officers have been indicted in the death of an 8-year-old girl named Fantability. Officers Brian Devaney, Sean Dolan, and Devon Smith are accused of fatally shooting Billy and injuring 3 others when they allegedly came under fire while on duty at a local high school football game. Now, originally, the 2 teenagers who were allegedly responsible for the original shots fired were charged with Billy's murder. However, it was later found that it was a police bullet that killed Billy. And even in the face of that information, the local DA did not take action or seek charges against the officers and left the murder charges against the 2 youths intact. Well, community outrage ensued, including protests and the like, and the DA reconsidered his approach, eventually indicting the officers and dropping the murder charges against the young men. Now, they still face charges for their roles in the shooting. Now, in response to dropping the charges against the teens, District Attorney Stolzmeyer stated, "While I believe that these defendants should be held accountable for starting the series of events that ultimately led to Fantability's death, developments during the grand jury investigation render it appropriate to withdraw these charges at this time." Now, each of the three officers are being charged with criminal counts of involuntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment as a result of their actions that night.
What do you
am
know? That
I am
court
always
TV.
baffled, absolutely positively baffled that individuals that are trained can always fear for their lives and keep their job, can always just be reckless and keep their jobs. Like, why would you show up anywhere and instead of de escalating the situation, just randomly start shooting into a crowd at a high school football game where we know traditionally families are gathered there?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a prison fight breaks out. And I'm not saying anybody deserves to die, but I can understand the use of greater force if you're dealing with a collection of violent criminals that are all trying to beat each other to a pulp.
Yeah.
And the fact that the DA was even hesitant
Right.
to charge them, and in footage that I couldn't get because I was getting so irritated, one of the commentators on court TV was like, well, I just think something is up. I think maybe the judge said something to the grand jury because they went from charging the boys to then charging the cops and not wanting to charge the boys. The boys didn't kill that girl. They have their own charges to deal with. The boys are not trained police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we get to a point in the United States that we stop worshiping the military and police officers as if they are freaking Tony Stark and can't do any wrong?
Yeah, because these are choices. These are like I said with the police. I always say it's a career choice, but there is training that goes into that. One thing
Yeah, this
about
is
being
ants where they line you up and go, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do.
right,
We get to choose what we want to do.
the police academy isn't by draft.
Don't become a cop.
It's not by draft like the old military. But when you're armed, one of the main things that I know is taught, regardless if you're police, security, or whatever, when you're an armed officer, you don't shoot without knowing your background, without knowing the background at the scene, without knowing what's behind your target of whatever that may be, because you can miss. And there goes the bullet. It keeps on going. The bullet doesn't say, oops, you missed. Let me stop. It keeps on going. So when
And
you're
there's some people I think are just too stupid to be cops. But let me preface this because I worked with a woman when I still worked at the hospital. And the reason why I left the hospital is because I'm not built to take care of someone for months and then they died. And because I was good at what I did, they put me, the hospital that I worked at, on the bone marrow unit. These were cancer patients that were not going to leave the hospital. To know that I could never transfer off that unit because they were like, this is your contract. This is like, unless you quit, like, this, no, I'm not built for it. So guess what I did? I left. I never wanted to get that mindset of becoming, the lethal nurse or Dr. Kevorkian, because some people get to that point where they try to justify to themselves inflicting harm or being negligent. But there was a woman I worked with. She was in her 60s at the time. And she didn't understand why all of us were irritated because we're like, New Year's Eve is coming up. These stupid fools are about to start shooting up in the air, and it never failed. ER would be because of suburban dads, suburban sons that get these guns that they don't properly keep up. Either there'd be a glitch and there would be injuries to the hand or the arm, or somebody would shoot up in the air and a neighbor would end up in the emergency room. And she's like, I don't understand. It just keeps going up.
What are you shooting at the moon? You think it's going to land on the moon?
I'm like, sweetheart, you are in a science-based career field, but you have no. I said, what comes up must come down. I was like, but just because you shoot a gun one direction, different things can change the trajectory.
We,
And if
we still
anybody
we,
remembers the show 1,000 Ways to Die,
we still
there
have
was
gravity.
people that died on a New Year's Eve because one person shot a gun up, and they didn't have the gun straight up. It was curved just a little bit. There was enough issues in the weather that it took it like 5 or 6 blocks over and pierced the skull of someone else who just happened to be outside.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, let's just pull up at a football game.
We still have gravity.
Rat-a-tat-tat like it's a Nerf gun.
We still have gravity. Last I checked.
I thought so too, but I guess we didn't shift it to the moon.
When they say shoot for the moon, maybe that was it. Shoot for the stars, maybe that was it too.
All right. Okay, we got 2 more. Oh Jesus! Hold on.
What happened?
Huh? Can you hear me?
What happened to your picture? Oh, okay, there it is. It's kind of your vision was breaking up.
Oh, sometimes when I crisscross yeah. That's why I didn't put my AirPods in, because it'll keep trying to bounce between all of these devices. Okay. I may be the Thanos of Apple, but they do get on my nerves at times. So, but let's get into we got 2 more videos left. Let's get into this second to last one.
On the docket tonight is the Playboy model murder trial. Former Playmate Kelsey Turner is awaiting trial for the murder of a prominent California psychiatrist with a taste for young women. Court TV's Ted Rowlands has the story.
Renowned psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard had been missing for 3 days when his body was found in the trunk of an abandoned BMW in the desert outside of Las Vegas. Judy Earp, his girlfriend of 17 years, was back at their home in California and sensed the doctor was in trouble.
I told him repeatedly that these are not, the kind of people you want to be associating with.
Judy was worried about this woman, 25-year-old Playboy and Maxim model Kelsey Turner. Judy says Kelsey was extorting money from Dr. Burchard.
Maybe that was your
about
boyfriend. Why don't you let
$300,000
him hang out with a younger woman
that I know about, and possibly more.
Burchard had a history of helping others and engaging with young, attractive girls he met online, like Kelsey. That's according to his friend, who did not want to be identified when he was interviewed by KSBW.
These women were just like an escape for him to have somewhere to go. He told me he met Kelsey on the website and met up with her, and they talked, and they went and had dinner a few times.
Dr. Burchard's friend says the psychiatrist started spending time and money on Kelsey, even renting this condo in Salinas, California for Kelsey and her mother to live along with Kelsey's child. Even after Dr. Burchard stopped paying the rent and Kelsey moved to Vegas, the two did keep in contact. And shortly before the murder, Kelsey reached out to the doctor, according to his friend.
He says, seems that Kelsey's having some trouble with her boyfriend out there in Vegas. He's hitting her, he's abusing her, and she has no money, nowhere to go. And I feel partly responsible for this.
Court documents show that Kelsey Turner was, in fact, reported as the victim in a domestic violence case less than a month before the doctor's murder. Dr. Burchard went to Vegas to see Kelsey, calling his girlfriend Judy only after he had arrived, saying he was spending the weekend and would be back on Monday.
I warned him on Saturday when he was there that, maybe you ought not wait till Monday to come home. Maybe you ought to just come home on the next flight.
After missing his flight and not responding to calls and texts, Judy called Las Vegas police. Dr. Burchard's body was found near Lake Mead, about 25 miles outside Vegas.
The actual incident occurred at a residence in the Las Vegas Valley, and then the body was found out by the lake.
This is the Las Vegas home where Kelsey and her boyfriend John Kennison were living and where investigators believe Dr. Burchard was murdered. Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, told a grand jury that Kennison attacked Dr. Burchard with a baseball bat and that after the initial attack, Kelsey insisted that her boyfriend knock him out. Pena also testified that the attack left Kennison covered in blood. According to arrest warrants, police recovered a bag from the Rio Hotel. It's where prosecutors say Turner, Kennison, and Pena fled to after the murder. Inside that bag, investigators found sheets of paper ripped from Dr. Burchard's notebook that contained his banking information and passwords.
What? Where are you traveling with that stuff?
Kelsey Turner was arrested in California 3 weeks after police recovered Burchard's body. Her extradition was delayed after it was determined that she was pregnant. She has since given birth to a girl while in custody. Her boyfriend, John Kennison, was arrested a few weeks later in Las Vegas. Both are facing murder charges. Kelsey's roommate, Diana Pena, pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and is expected to testify at their trials.
All right, the think tank.
Oh, Jesus. Oh,
So you had a predator.
we can't make this stuff up.
So you had a predator that got killed that had the audacity to write all of his information down in a book and take it with him. His girlfriend is trying to paint him as the victim, but she knew she was getting cheated on. And he was so cool, calm, and collected with the cheating that he's like, hey, babe, I'm going to stay with the side chick for the weekend. See you on Monday. And she's like, nah, babe, come home now. I have a bad feeling about this.
Right. Right. He couldn't resist that young thing.
And then his friend, who I'm going to call Jose, because we know that was a Jose. Still there talking about, well, you know, that was his release. Bruh, if you need a release in a relationship, that's time to go. It's time to go. And why don't he have no doctor friends? Because I work in IT. I have IT friends. I have friends that are professionals. Hell, y'all see me here every week with my friend Chris. That'll be like if all of my friends were in the age group of my kids. Red flag.
Right. I mean, if he's in a chat group and Big Ben's there, run.
Boy. And I could not imagine being in a relationship with anybody and me telling them, you know what, I'm gonna pay all these bills for this person. And because they having some issues.
Apparently.
I'm gonna go hang out. And first of all, how you gonna believe this stuff is that messed up? The homegirl got a roommate. And I'm like, yeah, this is a throuple situation. Cause ain't no way. But she has a roommate. And that roommate ain't helped her get out. You know the boyfriend is still there. Why are you? Because I didn't hear, maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear about a hotel room for this man. So why are you staying at the house where the domestic abuse is taking place? Because you're looking like Lord Farquaad in about 30 years.
Were you expecting the guy not to be there? Were you expecting the roommate not to be there?
And it's like, I know some bold people. But
you're coming into a situation as a doctor of money. Yeah, I don't think you're there just because she's into older men.
He must have been R. Kelly's doctor. He had to be R. Kelly's therapist. He had to be. He had to be. Ain't no fucking what, you know.
I mean, just apparently he's not a doctor of common sense, because use your brain. What's up here? It got you through whatever medical school you had to go through, but you forgot to go to the class on street smarts.
He's not as bad as the white woman dermatologist that somebody showed me a video of earlier that was telling people that they don't need to clean their whole bodies because it was a waste of time and a waste of money.
Yeah.
I was like, huh?
Right.
Oh, so you just a walking petri dish. Okay.
Yeah, the whole family.
Whew. Let's jump into this last video. Lord, here we go.
Telling you about it was delayed because of COVID-19. The road rage shooting case. The defendant in this one, Theodore Edgecombe, accused of killing immigration attorney Jason Clearman after the two got into some kind of an altercation on the roadway back in September. Now, jury selection is underway in this case right now. And once the jury is seated, we're going to go in there live. And it's projected that opening statements could start as early as this afternoon. Right now, what I want to do is bring in live court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae, who's standing by live for us in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with the very latest. Julia, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Julie. The latest out of the courthouse here in downtown Milwaukee is that a jury has been selected. They have 12 jurors and 2 alternates that are going to hear this case. The judge just dismissed everyone for lunch, and they will come back in about an hour to hear those opening statements. We don't know yet, because of the way this was conducted today without the media inside of that courtroom for jury selection, what the breakdown is. And we know that there may be some contesting from the defense, because yesterday they were concerned about the racial breakdown of the people who were in the pool of 50. There were about 3 or 4 African Americans who were in one of the early pools yesterday, and the defense attorney for Theodore Edgecombe made the objection on the record that the array did not match the demographics of Milwaukee County, which would be 64% white, 27% African American. That would have roughly meant about 13 people in the pool who were of color if it matched the demographics, but the judge did deny that, saying that that is not how the Supreme Court has ruled on racial breakdowns of the court. It can only be if there are some intentional moves by the prosecution to eliminate people of color from the jury. So we will be watching to see who is on this jury and who's going to be listening to those opening statements coming up soon.
Right, Julia. Julia, talk to us, please, about something that happened just a matter of days ago. The criminal complaint for Theodore Edgecombe was amended by the state, and they upped the stakes with this one, increasing the charge to something that carries a much more severe penalty. Walk us through where we were, where we are now going into this case, please.
I'm still here. I just don't want y'all to
watch. When this case actually was initially charged, it was back in October of 2020, before they even had the man in custody that they wanted to charge, and they charged him with reckless homicide based on the information they had at the time. It was first degree intentional homicide, or rather reckless homicide, here in Wisconsin. It carried a sentence of up to 60 years in prison. So there was wiggle room for a judge, discretion when it comes to sentencing. But recently, on the record, these prosecutors have changed that plea, or rather not a plea, but change the charge that the defendant is facing. It's the intentional homicide charge that carries a sentence of life in prison, so much more serious. And this is video we're showing here of Edgecombe in court. We know he pleaded guilty to 2 of the 3 charges that were against him. The bail jumping charges are now not going to be in front of this jury because he did plead guilty to those yesterday, but still, that very serious, the toughest charge that you can face for a murder is what he is facing, and what these jurors are going to hold as far as his fate in their hands.
Right. And Julia, after the shooting occurred, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my reading of some of the reporting that was done in this case prior to coming up on the trial was that this guy did not stay put, and he fled. And we know that can be a great tool for prosecutors if a state has a jury instruction for flight of consciousness of guilt. What do we know about this defendant, please?
This ain't Milwaukee's best, I can tell you that.
We know that after this shooting, he did leave the scene. I was actually on the scene yesterday taking a look at how it looked there. We've seen the grainy surveillance video, but there are steps right by where this fatal encounter happened. And then what investigators say is that Edgecombe took his bike that he had been driving and carried it away from the scene down some steps that you can't see on the surveillance video, but I was able to see yesterday. And you're pretty much out of the view of anyone who was on that road who would have seen what happened, because that road turns into a bridge. He then went on a bike trail, hid the bike, according to investigators, and then absconded from police for 6 months. They were unable to find him, and then they happened to pull him over in Kentucky on a traffic stop and determine who he was, and that's when that arrest happened. This defense team knows that that is an issue for their client. They actually asked some questions during voir dire today about flight, asking these potential jurors if they can separate the fact that someone may flee the scene but not be guilty, that they may be scared. And one of those potential jurors actually asked, if you trust the process, why run? So we'll be interested to see if a
he's
potential
black.
juror who answered like that is sitting on this jury, or if one of those peremptory strikes were used against them by the defense.
Right. This is going to be a really, really fascinating case. Certainly, neither side has any advantage to this one going in. And Julia, I was just told as you were sharing all that with our audience that we have some video of you at that scene where the shooting incident took place, and we want to play it for everyone at home now.
Here on the corner of North Holton Street and Brady Street is where that deadly encounter between Theodore Edgecombe and Jason Clearman happened. Investigators said that first responders found the body of Clearman on these steps, and we are just a few steps away from the street. You can see that North Holton actually runs here where cars can go. There's a bike lane, and then there's a sidewalk. This is the sidewalk that Clearman ran up. And you can see him in that grainy surveillance video after Edgecombe. His wife, driving their SUV, stopped about right here, really pulling over into the bike lane, putting on her flashers. Now, Edgecombe would have driven his bike first coming down Brady Street that you see there and down Holton with Evangelina Clearman quickly behind him. And he would have come up this sidewalk in order to get to these steps. And it's believed that he was going down the steps before that encounter. There's surveillance video and cameras everywhere around here. And it's those poll cameras that told investigators that after this shooting, that Edgecombe went down these steps with his bike and then to a bike trail, later to a residence, where after that, he is alleged to have absconded from police for 6 months before he was arrested in March of 2021. Now, that surveillance video is expected to be front and center for both sides in determining what happened and whether or not it was self-defense. Reporting in Milwaukee, Julia Janae with Court TV.
Okay.
We all just watched twice the surveillance footage. That man was on a bicycle. Last time I checked, we ride bikes. We don't drive them. So
correct.
I don't know how that's road rage when you have an SUV and a bicycle. That bicycle was in the bike lane. The wife pulled into the bike lane. And when the husband jumped out, I can pretty much tell you the conversation that happened. Because I had this conversation with somebody else earlier. And before I told them my thoughts, they said this. She's sitting there going, yeah, baby, get him. Because we've seen it. We know about the Karens and the Richards. And we know that this is probably not the first time that man did what he did. And he thought he was going to get away with it. That man in the surveillance video had already disappeared out of sight. So he was already on those steps.
You're right.
He was leaving the situation. He didn't stay on that street. He left the street. He was not aggressing towards them. He didn't throw the bike down and then turn around and threaten the car as it drove past.
Yeah.
And what I do know, there was a witness on the street who called 911 and said that the deceased took a boxing stance.
Mm.
And we don't know what other weaponry that he may or may not have had. But this man was not a little man. The gentleman on trial is very slender. We all saw that. I'm sorry. As a smaller human, if you are much, much bigger than me and you're continuing to follow me, and no telling what he's saying, if you continue to come at me, and I'm pretty sure we all know what he said to that black man. We know the trigger word that he used. It's obvious. If you get Swiss cheese, you get Swiss cheese. That is definitively self-defense. Because if Kyle Rittenhouse can purchase a gun illegally, go across state lines, and shoot people at a protest, you can't tell me that somebody being actively chased in 4K wasn't defending themselves. Now, if that man would have stayed on the main street, dropped his bike and turned around and would have been like, oh, what's up? And I'll be like, yeah, that's iffy. But he's actively trying to leave the situation. And this couple couldn't let the situation go. And I love how they keep going. Well, he ran. He is a black man in America.
There's a point to when you're de-escalating a situation and the word escalating. One is going down, one is bringing it up. So if you got somebody trying to bring it down and the other one saying, nope, I'm not done with you, then what do we have?
Well, not only that, let's not
And then you have a cheering section coming from the car.
Black people have been murdered after being arrested. Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner, George Floyd, because they tell us to comply. Philando Castile complied, still murdered. So the fact that after hundreds of deaths, with black people just existing in the United States and cops showing up, and you had a dead white man and a white woman using the ultimate arsenal, white woman tears. No, I wouldn't have stayed either. I understand why he ran. I understand why he ran. Because if the tables would have been turned, say he really truly was the aggressor, and that immigration attorney would have shot him dead in the street, there wouldn't have been a trial. There would have been parades, medals given to him, people high-fiving him. Ooh, way to protect the community from the thugs.
And an endorsement from Mar-a-Lago.
But we're sitting here once again, watching what happened on video and still questioning someone because this person isn't, in the prolific words of the late and great Paul Mooney, he wasn't the complexion for protection. Because once again, Kyle Rittenhouse bought a gun illegally, snuck said gun out of his friend's house, kept walking around after curfew, shot someone posing no danger to him, and they called it self-defense. So you're going to tell me that me as a black woman, and those of y'all that know me, you know this, there are times I will take walks to clear my head. So you can tell me I could be taking a walk, or I go take my bike out for a little stroll. If somebody decides that they just don't like me for whatever reason, they get irritated because of the outfit that I have on, the fact that I'm on a bike. Maybe they felt that I shouldn't have taken the turn that I've taken. They can chase me down and hunt me. And then if I defend myself, I could face life in prison. Like, they up the charges on him. Come on, it's intentional manslaughter. How was it intentional? He's running away. Intentional means you have intent. Intent means that you thought about it. You planned it out. You had a process to do it. If I'm running away, how was that intentional?
Right.
And this is why I said recently when I had to redo my life insurance. Y'all know I'm a nut. Y'all know I'm a nut, but I'm gonna always keep it real, and I'm always gonna be honest.
And the Taurus.
My insurance agent said, do you engage in any dangerous activities? And with a straight face, I said, well, of course, I'm a black woman that happens to be queer that lives in the United States. Yeah, every time I leave the house, it's dangerous as hell. And she's like, that's not what I meant. I said, but that's what I said. Because right now, even in 2022, what is more dangerous than being black? We have seen white people smack bears, pick up mountain lions, and put them in their cars. Willingly go feed alligators and crocodiles. But all of a sudden, racist white people fear for their lives because they see a black person walk down the street. Make it make sense.
Yeah.
There's even a video flirting around the internet of a dude. It looks like the Grand Canyon. I don't know if he's at the Grand Canyon or not. There's no net. He's not really connected to anything but a little wire. that looks real rickety, just swinging through the deepest part of it, where any minute he could fall to his death. And I'm like, white people do this stuff because they don't have anything that's going to give them an adrenaline rush.
Now they're
You
taking
can get
killing
pulled over
tigers.
by the cops and know that you're going to go home at night. You can go into a store and the cashier forget to give you a receipt. And you don't have a panic like, did she forget to take a sensor off? When I get to this door, are they going to say, hey, I have their receipt? Like, white people don't have that. Because even tonight, about an hour before we went live, I had to stop at the grocery store real quick because it's about the storm where I am. And I realized there's just a handful of essentials. Well, essentials for me. Geeky, I don't want to hear it because I know you were watching Geeky. And you ain't got to point out that my essentials are a lot of bit bougie. But anywho, I had to go
Grape
pick
juice.
that too. But I needed my Javalia mocha blend coffee for my cold brew, and I needed my Starbucks K cups. I said my choices. Look, my essentials may not be your essentials. Okay. But you know me. You know I have very expensive taste. Even with $300 boots on, a $600 purse, a good couple $1,000s worth of jewelry just in my nose and in my lip. We ain't even gonna talk about the jewelry on my hands. And I pay a good $200-$300 a whop for my glasses, and I don't even know how many pair of glasses I have at this point. Y'all don't judge me, okay? That's not the point of this. I still had a cold sweat after I paid for my stuff and was walking out because I did something I don't normally do. I took my receipt and stuck it in my wallet. I usually put my wallet in and then clip my receipt underneath this on my phone so that when I walk out, I can pull it out if there's any questions. Because sometimes, well, the amount of, you know, gems and metal that I have in my body sets some stuff off.
X-Men.
I'm pretty sure that no
Wolverine.
white person alive has felt that amount of tension. And when I got into the line, I was ignored for a good 3 minutes because the cashier wanted to talk to the manager who's standing there, who sees me as I'm trying to get her to scan my customer card off of my phone. And I'm unloading with one hand and like holding my phone up with the other, like, y'all don't see me? Because I see you. And my big bougie ass is sitting right here because I know you see me. And everybody else in the store don't see me. Because I heard they little whispers talking about she is so active. Why she got to come to the store like that? Bitch, I had something to do before. And I don't care. I will still put on makeup and still dress to the nines to come to the grocery store. Okay? I'm going to do this. I don't leave the house looking a mess. And I'm not judging anybody on how they leave the house. That's just me.
No pajamas, no slippers.
Yeah, but I'm just like,
bonnets.
Like, my heart was literally beating as if I did something wrong. I knew that I paid for my purchase. I knew that everything was bagged up.
I tend to always walk out with a receipt in my hand with the bags. Out of habit, as a tourist ginger.
No, that's not why. Ginger King. Nope. Your mother is
Spaniard.
No. Look at them phenotypes. But final thoughts on the night?
Okay, well, mine is something that's not a final thought, but a reflection on what happened this past weekend. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a big sports fan. And I saw something over the weekend, and well, it was actually a video after a game that really irked me. And it was by a prominent player who plays for the team with a star on their helmet.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
And I know it's been talked about, anyone that follows sports talk and things like that.
I was just trying to
Um,
find a clip that wouldn't get us a community guidelines violation on YouTube, and I couldn't find one.
no. I'll just say this. When you're in a certain position, whether you think you're a role model or not, or a face of a franchise, or the face or one of the faces in the league, whether you're in the heat of emotions, whether in a win, usually in a loss, your emotions are different in a loss. Sympathizing, condoning, or encouraging actions towards officials of that sport. Now, remember, these officials in sports, it's not a full time job for these people. They do have other jobs, and what happened was as nasty as we've seen, because we've seen it usually in NBA games because of the fans are closer to the court and closer to the exits when they leave. So we see it a lot. Usually things against the players more than officials. Um, but the fact that it took literally 2 days to come out and form an apology after NBA Referee Association came out with their statement 3 hours maybe before you came out with yours. I was not happy with those actions. Like I said, I give respect, whether win, lose, draw, whatever. Hey, it didn't go my way. But to condone and literally on the podium, not every player gets to stand up on a podium. So you're on the podium as face of the franchise, basically, minus Hollywood, their big time owner, and literally sympathize with. I understand. Hey, you know, basically, hey, if I was up in the stands, I'd be doing the same thing. That's what it came across. So I wish that more people were held accountable for those actions. Now, I don't know if anything's going to come out of this. I don't know if some sponsors will be lost or whatever. But this number one, this isn't a color issue. This is a decency issue and respect for other human beings and their professions. We are
Like
human.
I said, I tried to get a clip that would not give us
Yeah.
a community guidelines violation over here.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't really want to
Yeah,
go
and
into
I
more.
know if we were like, if they allowed us to go live on Twitter, we could have put it on Twitter because anything goes on Twitter. Twitter
Yeah.
is the frat house of social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
And then I tried to like censor a clip, but
Yeah.
it
It didn't show enough
right.
because it showed one of the players deflecting like a empty bottle. So initially people were like, hey, look at those fans. They're even throwing stuff at their players. And initially I saw that clip and I thought the same thing until later I found out this wasn't the targets. These weren't the intended targets. And I quickly disappeared from that reaction that I initially had. But yeah, I was taken back by, like I said, you're in the heat of emotions. You're upset about a loss. It didn't go your way, but you're condoning something that is just. What if that was you? What if that was your uncle, your dad, somebody going off the field, seeing whether it's empty or hopefully not a full bottle of anything being tossed, hurled, and I saw it was not one, it was not two, it was several
And
things
my thing
hurled.
is, as a former cheerleader, former coach, the daughter of a coach, the sister of coaches, the mother of players, the sibling of players. And unfortunately for me, I was talking to my dad when that happened, and we were watching it at the same time. I did not participate in any of that.
Yeah.
But I was embarrassed to the point where I had to get off the phone with my dad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, like I said, I really felt, I mean, to come out and say, well, that's a reason why those referees ran off so quick. Referees in sports are leave in an orderly way, whether they're jog off, walk off. They leave because after a game, you got media coming in, you got people trying to come on the field to at least, maybe meet a player or something. That's part of their routine. They are to leave the field in a, they're not taking their time and wandering around the field. They're leaving after the game. And that wasn't them trying to get out of harm's way. That's what they do. They leave the field or the court or whatever sport it is. So there was just a lot I took away that was just really disappointing and frustrating. Like I said, regardless if this is a member of your team that you cheer for or not, this was a member, a prominent face of a league. And it went untouched by the NFL. This was the NBA who came out, a different sport. Their referee association came out. Now, like I said, I don't know what will come in the coming day or two. But it took another sports referee association to come forward with their own statement condemning his actions.
Well, you got to realize this is the same league that said Big Ben's actions were just a lapse of morality. So I really don't expect much from them. I really don't.
But that's really all I want to say right now, since we don't really have more on it. I don't really want to go into more details.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that at least by next week we'll have a little bit more and
Yes,
have a way to,
because it's important. These are athletes. These aren't
yeah,
just
and hopefully by next week we'll have a way to convey this where we don't get kicked off the live and
right.
people understand
Yeah.
the gravity of it, because that's my biggest thing. From mistakes in the past, me just willy-nilly sharing things,
Mm-hmm.
and YouTube has cut the live and been like, oh, you can't post for 3 days. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But my final thoughts are, number one, no one is above reproach. No one. I don't care if they're your favorite anything. You can like somebody all you want. Realize these people don't even know that you exist. So please stop worshiping them and giving them passes. 2, remember that politicians work for you. If you can sit there and tell a teacher, a police officer, or a service industry worker that I'm paying your bills, tell your congressman and your senator and your representative that. And tell your police officers that. Start holding them accountable instead of acting like they're gods among men. No, they're bullies that were given a badge and a free pass. And 3, and finally, if you know someone who's currently a caretaker for someone, please check in with them regularly. Their mental health is taking a hit hour by hour. Please make sure that they are okay. Because I guarantee you, right about now, they feel completely isolated and alone. And maybe also stop by and help them out a little bit. But once again, thank you all for joining us. I will see you all tomorrow for new topics, new conversations. Until next week with this one, until tomorrow. As always, each one reach one, each one teach one. Have a good night, y'all.
Everybody.